Welcome to the PIO Podcast, a place for all things public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local government. An open forum to learn, grow, and develop your public information skills. Your host, Robert Tornabene, is a public information officer with over 10 years in the field and 27 years of law enforcement background. In each episode, we will explore different aspects of the public information officer profession. Weekly, we will delve into the field of public information by talking to other PIOs. So sit back and enjoy this episode.
Good afternoon. For today's episode of the PIO podcast, we have Public Information Officer and Captain of the Orange County Fire Department, Thanh Nguyen, on with us today. And Thanh, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on. Several months ago, I interviewed a fire captain or deputy chief from a fire department in rural Indiana. And one of the things he said to me was, if you really want to get some experience or understand the pace of what it's like to be a public information officer, go in and work with a fire PIO out west. And he had some interesting insights in it. And he said I didn't truly understand how hard people worked until he dealt with a captain, or went out. I think it was a lieutenant somewhere. I think it was San Bernardino. And he was out there and worked with them for a period of time. And that was why I wanted to make sure I got you out here, because number one, you're very active on social media and you're very active posting information out to the public. And I felt that you would be a good role model out there for other PIOs in the field.
Well, I appreciate it.
So how long have you been in this role as a public information officer?
So for the Orange County Fire Authority, I've been in this role for a little over a year now. And before that, back in 2019, my original fire department that I was with for 23 years contracted out with Orange County Fire Authority to provide fire and paramedic services. So it's been a seamless transition pretty much coming over here. I was a PIO with the Garden Grove Fire Department prior to coming over here, and I'd done that for about 4 years or so.
Nice. So the whole time you've been a firefighter, that's your background, so that you weren't in any kind of public relations or anything like that prior to that.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So, in the fire side, you guys are the terminology is always so technical for you guys. And that is an aspect that maybe not so much on the law enforcement side sometimes, because we get a lot of reporters that come into the field as PIOs. Do you see that does not happen on your end on the fire side?
I think it gets technical when you're not, brought up in that system. And so if you're on the outside listening in, it seems like there's a lot of technical jargon there. When in fact, I think we actually try to do a lot of plain English when we're communicating. But that's definitely something that we keep in mind, at least for me, where, I try to explain it in a way where the general public doesn't need an explanation from me. Okay.
So you guys handle some very large scale operations, especially Orange County. It's a large county in California. How do you ramp up for some of the larger scale incidents that have occurred in your community?
So our agency has, because we contract with different cities throughout the county, we have a large response area, and part of that large response area includes wildland. And so, we're always susceptible to having vegetation fires. And last year, same thing held true. We had 3 different big significant fires. And so how we prepare for something like that is, outside of regular ongoing training and specialized training that our agency will send us to, many of us that are on the incident management team actually go out of the county a lot. So part of my role is I'm one of the incident management team PIOs for the county here. However, I'm also part of a federal team that I go out, throughout California.
So you're responding to things a lot more frequently, especially with the volume that happened last year. So what is your thinking? Walk us through the steps you got to take to ramp up for that.
So the thinking is that you definitely need to know what's in your backyard and all the potential. So we're not only preparing for the physical act of protecting lives and property, with firefighting technique and skills, but also, all the various ancillary components that come along with that physical act of firefighting. And one of that is communications, and it's a big deal. I humbly submit that, next to the act of actually saving someone or their property, communication is a close second in there. Because when you're asking people to evacuate, at a moment's notice, beyond that initial notification of get out, people are going to have questions of, okay, so what's going on with my home? How long am I going to be evacuated for? And so that's part of the PIO's job, is to provide pertinent information in a timely manner to the right audience, so they can make the right decisions with that information.
So you talk about the value of the public information officer and them making sure they communicate properly. I would think that, like you said, you're saving lives in a sense, because if you just tell people to get out and you don't tell them which way to go, people potentially could be going right into a really deadly situation, because it doesn't take long for a fire to overcome a road and make it impassable.
Well, absolutely. And you know what? And the thing is, you can't rely on just one form of communications, whether it be social media or the county's alerting system. You actually need to rely on every form of communication that you can get your hands on, because the one thing that I found is not everybody's on the same communication platform. So just because you put something out on a reverse 911 or the county alerting system doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's registered for something like that. We do have people that choose not to be connected very much. And so, but in an emergency, we take care of those folks also. So we try every form of communications to get to people.
What level of communication with somebody that's not connected? What would you as a PIO have to, what are you doing for those people that don't have social media or not registered for those alert systems?
So during a large fire incident, our firefighters are joined at the hip with our local law enforcement. And so, we, based on fire behavior, time and all the things that go into that, we will work with our law enforcement partners and tell them, hey, you know what, when a fire gets to a certain point, this is what needs to happen. And so we're working hand in hand with them to determine evacuation warning zones versus evacuation order zones, and so and when it gets to it, not only are we putting it out electronically, but then we're also, our law enforcement partners, our deputies, our police officers are actually making it out there to those neighborhoods and evacuating people.
So they're doing it old school. It's on a loudspeaker in a squad car or in a vehicle.
For now, we have to go, from the fancy high-end electronic stuff all the way to what we have done in the past, right? Because we want to make sure we're addressing everybody.
So you referenced the Orange County fires back in 2020 and everything that happened. I mean, the state of California was in, unbelievable amount of the whole Northwest, including California, was in multiple sets of fires. What is it like? What considerations should be coming into play as a PIO? You're dealing with all that. What are you thinking, and how could things been done differently? Obviously, you do like a hot wash or a debrief, thinking about, okay, what did we do? What could we have done better?
Well, you just touched on it right now. And one of the best things to learn is, as soon as the incident is scaling down, you got to have some sort of a demobilization plan, right? And it ranges on a wide scale, where it's like, okay, so how do we get our residents back into their homes in a safe manner? And then number two is that, what is the next step as far as recovery goes? So we have a communication plan there, but what you were just talking about is that going to be that hot wash, if you will. All right. And so we can do the after action reports, which takes time, but there's nothing that beats just that, hey, let's get our key players, the heads of the sections together, just right before we start driving off away, from each other. And let's identify the things that worked for us, and then, things that we can do differently the next time. So yeah, it's just about any incident you go on to, if you can actually, capture your folks for a short bit and go over that stuff, it's invaluable.
So you're doing it pretty much right then and there as you're winding down. It's not something you're waiting a couple of weeks to come back to and
yeah,
go.
we have different levels of it, but
Okay.
we'll have one like right away where, hey, what went well here, and let's capture that for the next go around, and then we have the written report
For the fire PIO in the actual fire zone. As you're doing these, and I've seen some where they're doing a briefing every hour, or they're doing a morning briefing and an afternoon briefing, or a noontime briefing and then an evening briefing. Walk me through that process as you guys are putting those media releases out, or those media presentations out, because there is a pattern to do it, a way to do it. You have a form. I know that there's a form you guys typically use, whether it's a FEMA form or whatever it might be.
So how we communicate is, like any incident, it's going to be incident driven, right? And generally it's going to be a morning brief and an evening brief. And so we try to share that with the public. Now, if there's more information to be disseminated during the day, then we'll do so. What a lot of people out in the public do not realize is that, they may be sitting there asking, well, why am I not seeing information midday or whatnot on social media? Why not put that stuff out? But anybody that's done the information thing will know that, there's a lot of work that goes into that one simple little tweet that goes out, and so we don't want to just randomly put something out that hasn't been vetted, and that it's not going to change within the next few minutes. And so we're constantly working on that. But back to what I said is that if there's more information that needs to go out, we will put that out. And we have during fire incidents. I've seen fire behavior change, and, and Mother Nature, doesn't always tell us. We have weather prediction, but, combined with fuel, topography, and then there's the human element too. It's a challenge. And so it's a constant to update information.
All right, great. So what are the do's and don'ts of being a public information officer on the fire side?
On the fire side is that a do is to establish relationships, right? And so when we get these really large vegetation fires, I would strongly recommend that you get your counterpart in the communication shop, and and be on the short list. Both of you need to be on the short list for answering the phone. And when I call you, I expect an answer, and vice versa. And so that's a do. A don't is going to be wandering off and out of your lane. And it could easily be done because sometimes the fire side and the law enforcement side will kind of merge, and you got to realize where you're at. And that's what experience and a lot of question asking, and learning from previous people, and staying in your own lane.
All right, so let's explore that a little bit, the staying in your own lane.
Mhm.
I know you've referenced it in some interviews that you've done before with a couple other organizations. Go a little bit more in depth in that, because obviously you don't want to cross a line, I guess.
Yeah, it's you don't want to cross the line for a few reasons. One is, it's first of all is it's important to the public, right? If you're the one that's going to be up front speaking about it, you should be the subject matter expert on that one. And number two, which ties in with that, is you have the jurisdiction for that, right? And so, the longer I do this, the more I realize that, there are a lot of things that the law enforcement PIO is going to be handling. And then, the experienced law enforcement officers have the same skill set also. They'll quickly realize, and they'll look at me and just go, you got this, right? And I just go, yeah, it's, and a lot of it doesn't have to be formal. It's just a look at each other and just go, who's getting this one? And we roll with it.
So that's about having those relationships on with those PIOs from your counterparts ahead of time.
100%.
Okay.
Yep. I've had lunch and coffee with a lot of PIOs in this county. I have a strong belief in having a good working relationship with people, and how that starts is to actually have that relationship before you actually need them.
Absolutely.
Isn't it so much better when you can go into an incident and I know this city PIO, and and I know that he or she will answer the phone without any doubt.
Yeah, it is definitely important. If you don't have those relationships when the incident occurs, you're not going to be able to cultivate them after the fact. It's not going to happen.
Yes.
All right. So you talked about in an interview what your concerns with images or video that are sent to you by personnel in the field.
Mhm.
What's a concern with that?
Well, there's a few things that go into it, right? One is that is it appropriate for dissemination? And sometimes, and that's what we're trained to do, is to have an eye for that and see if it's appropriate and is it timely. What may seem pretty benign to everybody else, we're thinking downrange as to how people may see this. It's not a matter of hiding or anything, because our organization is transparent. When I go out with an IMT, the information is transparent. There's nothing that we're concealing. However, we're thinking and we're considering a lot of people's perception of things. So that's something that you do need to consider.
So in that case, where the considerations for people that may not be aware, is it possibly the perception of the way the accident may be viewed? You're taking a picture of an accident scene or a fire scene, or maybe victims being removed out of the location. Is that where you're going along the lines?
Yeah. Well, that's just part of it. And sometimes, let's face it, we as PIOs, you will get some pretty astounding images, or videos sent to you. And on the fire side, without it being a crime scene or anything like that, on the fire side, I've received images and videos that just would look so amazing, to be able to share with the public. But you know what? There's something that may violate HIPAA, right? And or something similar to that, or if you have some forethought and you're thinking downrange, well, you know what, this may actually have a legal aspect to it, and that we're getting out of our lane at that point. And believe me, I've just said thank you, and then just filed that away.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that some people have very good eye for taking photographs, and they think, okay, this is a perfect photograph, but yet the impact to the agency's image can be extremely, very, very heavily damaged because that image goes out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sure. There you go. So yeah, it could be, your image could be heavily damaged from that picture that gets put out, thinking, hey, it's a beautiful picture, but that perception for the agency really can be heavily damaged. Okay, so how have you handled photos of firefighters with their names on the jackets, on the back of the jackets being put out? Is that an issue? Because I know sometimes the firefighters love to have their image out there. I know in some houses, I know in my previous agency, if your picture got put in the paper, your name made it, you were buying ice cream for the house.
Yeah.
So,
you know what, so when you do something like that, and it's funny, is that you either have people that really enjoy being in the spotlight, and then you have people that will do anything in their power to get away from that. And so, but the one thing is that you got to have a social media policy in place. All right. And it's not to suppress anyone's ability to share, their images or their thoughts. However, it's a guide, right, on how we're going to go about things, stay professional, and not get ourselves into trouble. And so if you have that policy and you stick with it, it's good. And and our policy is no different than anybody else's, I think, where the whole idea is that you can portray yourself, and and it's consistent with your organization and what the community is all about. I think you're good.
Great. I'm going to go off on a little side mark here. The accident, the helicopter accident with Kobe
Oh.
Bryant, the crash that he had. There were some images that were taken and kind of passed around amongst, if I'm not mistaken, amongst law enforcement personnel that had arrived
Mhm.
on the scene first. Those are kinds of things that we as PIOs, we can't control that. But is that something that as an agency, we need to kind of make sure that we're talking about to our personnel?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with communications is that it could be tricky for someone that doesn't really know the laws, and the idiosyncrasies that go into it. So yeah, it definitely something that you need to discuss. And and when you discuss these things, it's it goes back to what I just said a second ago. Is like, if you're going to share things, just got to ask yourself, is this consistent with who I work for and the community that I serve? And if you hesitate at all, and I mentioned this earlier in response to somebody's tweet, is that your finger is hovering right over that enter button and you're not quite sure whether you should or shouldn't, you probably shouldn't. Right? And believe me, I've been there many a times where I just went, no, and you just make it go away.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So Than, how do you handle internal messaging for staff during a major incident? Or do you even have time for that?
So that fortunately, when you're with a larger agency, you have people, right? And so we divide and conquer. And so and one thing that we're working on, and we actually have in place, and we're always refining, is knowing whether an incident is going to grow, right? And so when our incident commanders are trained, when they go out, is to recognize, is this incident going to stay and be finished within an hour or two? Or is this going to go into the next operational period? And we have to plan for our personnel, take care of them and whatnot. So, and part of that is the communications piece. So we have a plan in place. Okay, we have this incident. There's a potential for it to grow. So now we've got to get additional people to get in here. I will tell you this. I don't know if you recall the Thomas fire in Ventura County. This is back in 2017. I've got a friend that is the lead PIO for Cal Fire Team 4, the incident management team. And on that incident, they had, I think, over 75 PIOs assigned to the incident.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because of a large, widespread area. And, so that's something that we do as the PIO, is to determine where's this going to be in the next 12 hours, 24 hours, and so on.
Well, that's something that's conceivably, well, I know it's different from the law enforcement side. It's very hard for us to plan for that because the perception is in most cases, the scene should be secure within X amount of hours, and then it's a matter of scaling back, and then you're typically back in your office. But for you guys, your office is out in the field for could be days, weeks.
Yeah, and some of them actually last months. They're fortunately they don't always go that way, but I've been on a few that have lasted that long.
So how do you handle, as a PIO, how do you handle your own rehab? Because the fire side has always been really good about rehab for recovery and rehab for their own personnel, much different than law enforcement side. How do you handle it for yourself, or how do PIOs handle it?
That's where a large team comes into place, and we rotate people in their jobs, their functions for the incident. Because if you're handling the phone calls or you're handling the social media piece of it, you're interacting, right, with the public, including the media and residents, scared residents, upset residents, and and it's good to rotate people, and so they're not just stuck into one position and and taking the brunt of it all.
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, that's something that's a little different on the fire side than it is for the law enforcement side. we're getting better at that. We're doing a lot more networking where we're admitting that, okay, we need to bring people in to help us pick up the back end. But on the fire side, you guys have been doing this in the incident management system for a lot longer than law enforcement has. And that's good to see that you guys have, it's all planned it's in the plan.
Mhm.
That's good. All right. So we'll lighten it up a little bit. We'll go with some rapid fire questions for you. Last good book you read?
The Mission, the Men, and Me. It's it was actually required reading for a class I recently took. And so, I got the book and started reading it and couldn't put it down. It was really a good book.
That is a good book. I have read it. So outstanding. Binge-worthy TV show.
I looked at that, and before I answer that, I would have to ask you how much time you got.
So you have a few.
Yeah. The ultimate longest one that I've ever gotten sucked into was Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, I know. Isn't it amazing how if you have the downtime, it doesn't take much.
I don't have a lot of it, but when I get a few hours, it's especially when everybody in my house is gone, get the dog on my lap, turn on the TV, and there I go.
That's rehab too. That's it. Okay. Bourbon, Scotch, beer, or wine?
That's a tough one. I would say bourbon.
I like my bourbon, so I'm glad.
And I would say, if you ever had an opportunity, if you do enjoy it, is make your way to Kentucky.
Oh yeah. Yep. You got to do the bourbon.
Absolutely.
Trail. Absolutely. Do you have a personal motto?
I got a couple, but since we're talking PIO here, I would say that my motto is we have to tell our story. And I've always told, my bosses that if we don't tell our story, somebody else will. And there's a good likelihood that it might not be the version we were looking for.
That is so true. And more PIOs are learning this. They're getting better at it than they used to be. But we can no longer stay silent. So that's a good motto. If you could spend a day in someone else's shoes, whose would they be and why?
Oh man, that was a tough one. Out of all the ones that I read here, I think that was a tough one. And I don't know if I have one. And mainly it's because I live such a busy life. I don't want to sound conceited, but when I get some downtime, I just want to be around my family.
That's okay. That's okay. I get it. And you know what? And I'll tell you, family is a great way to relax and just let go. So I'm with you. All right. If you could do anything, I would blank.
If I could do anything, I would say that after this part of my life is over with, is to actually live in other countries. I would say, because my wife and I enjoy traveling, and but it's usually so quick, that it's already over with. So I would love to go back to a few of these countries and actually stay there for 4 or 6 months or so, and actually meet the people there, and eat what they eat versus in a tourist trap.
Right. Oh, that's cool. Do you have a hidden talent?
I don't. I'm very talentless. I would say. If I was going to say I had a talent, I think I have a knack for leveraging other people's skills and being able to accomplish my mission.
That is a very good skill to have. Very nice. All right, Thanh. So is there anything else you want to share?
Well, like I said, that the number one thing is that if you go in there and when you are putting out your messaging, I had a friend that I used to work with that always said to me, whenever you're on the phone with someone, smile, because it comes across on the other side of the phone. And I've taken that to my messaging also. So try to smile when you're doing that. There's different ways to react to messages, but if you smile, you're going to do well.
Excellent. I like that. I never thought about that, but you're right, because your jaw relaxes in a certain way, and Yeah, it comes off. The reception is everything. Very good. All right. So how can people best reach out to you and learn about you or connect with you if they have questions? I'll put everything in the show notes, but is there a simple way to connect with you or is there a preferred way?
As you know, I'm pretty connected on social. So Twitter is probably the best way. And I leave my messages open so people can always send me a message.
Cool. Thank you very much for coming on the show. I'm glad you came on. I was looking forward to you coming on and hearing your background and your experience in the fire side. I'm trying to make this PIO podcast as broad as I possibly can. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Nguyen from the Orange County Fire Department. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to contact the show, please email us at thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.